know where we did them.
We left them here.
We have the talent phone, and we were letting people text anonymous questions in case you didn't want to say about your own child, but to ask that way. But we had slips of paper with the number, but I don't know what we did with it last night. Oh, there's one.
Yeah, we had like a stack of them last night. Somebody came in and stole these.
That phone's going to be lighting up.
Yeah, that phone's going to be lit up. 919-623-8138.
So if you want to write it down in text.
But do you have that sign-up sheet?
Yes.
We'll just
we
flip
can put it on
to
the
that.
top of that. That's good.
Yeah.
It's somewhere floating around.
I
I sent a sign-up sheet and asked for people's emails because I'm going to send out an email with resources, like a lot of the articles that I pulled this information from to send to y'all afterwards. So if you are interested in that information, make sure you email us. Yeah. There is coffee, water, little cake. Please feel free to get this as we kind of settle in.
All right, I think we're ready.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, thank you for coming. This is a great turnout. This is something we've tried to get started for the last several years, these kind of parent education seminars. And we've kind of started and stalled and started, and just we're hoping that this will kind of kick it off this year again for the great sessions. We've got 3 currently planned over the course of the year. And man, if we get turnouts like this, maybe we'll plan a few more. But we had I think we had 25 or 26 here last night. So and then you guys here this morning. That's great. I mean, when you put together things like this, you want people to show up. So again, thank you for the support. This is last spring towards the end of the school year when we did our annual surveys. We asked what topics would families want to hear about if we did parent education seminars. And it was funny because the different grade levels gave us different responses. Like the lower campus all wanted like parenting tips, and the upper campus was like, they're done with parenting tips. They're just like they were social media and technology and those things. But across the board, families showed an interest in learning about anxiety, and that's something that has been a trend across education, just throughout the industry. Whenever we go to our conferences, the professional development things, and it doesn't matter if it's for teachers or administrators. This is a major topic, and it's one of the things, again, that is we're seeing in our schools and we're dealing with. And it's not a Grace problem. It's not a Raleigh problem. This is a national issue that's taking place. Again, we thank you for being here and for supporting this. We're excited, and again, look forward to how our programs will develop throughout the year. And I am going to say a quick word of prayer to start us off. Father God, thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessings of each new morning. Thank you for a crisp fall morning. We thank you for the opportunity to come together and, first to come before you in prayer, but then to come together and learn. You've built this community, Lord. You've put us together. You've got each one here with a purpose. Help us to seek your purpose, your direction, your wisdom in everything that we do. Help us to desire you in all that we do. And for our conversation today, as we talk about anxiety and depression and those types of concerns and challenges for our students and for our families, our ultimate prayer is that every child would know that they are known, valued, and loved first and foremost by you, and then by others also, Lord, and that they would seek their identity in Christ. Help us to do whatever we can to support that message. Help us to again, represent you well each and every day. And we pray that you bless Carrie and her work and bless her as she shares this morning. In your name we pray. Amen.
Well, good morning. This is different for me because I know the majority of you that I knew as I was just a parent at Grace. So it's a little different when you're talking to people that you know personally or have interacted with. But just to make sure, how many of you are lower campus parents? Okay, and how many of you are upper campus parents? Okay, so it's a good mix. And so I'll try to do my examples for both. But I think the message for lower campus parents is if you're seeing some of this in your kids already, the stuff that I say about upper campus, unfortunately is going to be your reality in a few years. So it's all valuable information, and I'm hoping that I can give you some tips that you can do now and start in your family now. So maybe the impact of anxiety on your family will be less as they get to the upper campus. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Carrie Hawley. I'm the school counselor. I also have 3 kiddos at Grace. I have 1 on each campus. I have a lower, a 5th grader, a 7th grader, and a high schooler, a 9th grader. One of them in doing this, I just said she's, right down there was it too. Prone to anxiety, and as I was doing this, I'm giggling because I'm like, maybe we need to get some intervention here. We got a little bit more going on than I kind of realized. Because that's the thing about anxiety, especially when it's in our home. We tend to adapt our lives to it, and you don't realize that it's as big of an issue as it is. So I left some time at the end for discussion and questions. As we mentioned, we have the Talon phone, so you can text them as they come in. I won't answer them right then, but then I will answer them at the end. If there's questions you have and you would rather do it anonymously, completely fine with that. But I think you can just look around and see. I think one of the biggest outcomes of this is that you're not alone. All of our kids are facing this. I'm going to show y'all some video, and to me, it's really powerful because it's from teens themselves, just about living and growing up in 2019. It's just much different than when we were young, and so I'm hoping that you'll be able to see that and kind of see through their words, kind of how they're feeling. So, just some of the latest stats over the last 10 years, almost 20% increase in children being diagnosed. When I say children, that was, I believe, age 5 to 18 for this particular study. So almost a third of children are affected throughout their lifetime. But what's, to me, on that second bullet is most concerning, 80% never get help. And what that means for us is we have kids that are in our homes that are suffering with anxiety that aren't getting help. So we're trying to parent kids that are in full-blown anxiety, but we're not dealing with it. Your teachers are trying to teach them, and they're having tons of anxiety, but nobody is aware. The reason that we want to treat anxiety is because untreated anxiety leads to lots of bad outcomes. Depression. Untreated anxiety is the #1 cause of depression in teens. Okay, so the stress they feel, how they feel trapped, that leads to depression, and then we know depression leads to suicide and things of that nature that are far more serious. So we want to make sure we're treating it when we see signs. And then also, drop in grades we can see, and then as well as substance abuse. Because if our kids are feeling this way and we don't help them with positive strategies and ways to cope with it, once they get older, they are going to search for a way to numb it. They're tired of feeling like that. So you just need to be aware that there's a big link between anxiety and substance abuse. That's what the professionals say. This is what teens say. This was from last year, and to me, this is pretty eye-opening. They were asked, what is the biggest problem for your peers? Look at that. 96% say anxiety is a major or minor problem for their kids. That's the biggest thing in their lives right now. Bigger than drugs, alcohol, bullying, anything. So that should really be eye-opening for us, that these kids are feeling it, whether we believe it's real or not. So what is anxiety? I think it helps us to understand 2 things. This is just basically out of the dictionary, a noun. Everybody has anxiety at some point, okay? We all know the feeling, it's a thing. In general, we feel anxiety and it passes. Somebody that it moves into a disorder in the psychiatric world, it doesn't pass, it's ongoing and it keeps going. I mean, most of the people, I think the average, I didn't put this up here, I think is their child has struggled with it 2 or 3 years before they get help. And that is so sad to me and unfortunate. So here's ways that you can tell. Normal anxiety, and this is a big thing for you to understand, it's normal. It's the way we were created. Things are supposed to stress us out. So we need to normalize it for our kid. It's not something to get rid of. It's something to work through and teach them how to work through. It tends to be temporary, tends to be harmless. Not that it won't stress the child out or stress you out as the parent, but it's not going to hurt them in the long run. There's some examples, especially like with younger kids, reoccurring nightmares, but you talk them through it, you find a routine, eventually in a couple months, it's over. They might have had an imaginary friend on and off. This is all things that kind of come and go, especially when they're young, but it doesn't really impact your lives too much. When it passes over into a disorder, where we really need to pay attention, is when it's persistent. It doesn't go away. It's like, we've solved this anxiety and now another one just pops up. You never get any relief. The child doesn't get relief and the family doesn't get relief. And what happens then is they start to avoid certain places, certain activities. It interferes. This is when you tend to start seeking out help, is when it's interfering with their functioning at school. I've got a slide later. Some of these overlap, so just bear with me. But like when you have a child crying in the classroom, okay, then parents and teachers start to be like, ooh, something's going on. And when I say crying in the classroom, that isn't just a lower campus problem. I have high schoolers who are breaking down in the classroom crying. So when it starts to impair their functioning at home, maybe they don't want to go on a trip with you. Maybe you're supposed to go away with your spouse for a night or two and your kid just can't cope even though they're 14 years old or well beyond the age that it should be okay for a parent to leave for a night or two. So that's when it kind of passes over. The main question that you can ask yourself, and I think this is particularly important for kids, for families who only have one kid, but honestly, I have three. And like I said, I have one who has anxiety, and we just tend to kind of build our world around that, and we don't notice that it's weird. But I think particularly for you don't realize that your child, that the responses your child is having is abnormal. So the best thing you can look at their peers. If most of their peers are able with that, but if you're doing it because your child literally cannot do it without breaking down, you might have a problem. So it's really the out of proportion response to normal things that other people do normally. And that's how you can, ask yourself, is it reasonable that a child this age should be able to do this without feeling a lot of anxiety? So when we talk about anxiety disorders, these are probably the 5 most prominent that we've heard of. I'm only going to go into more detail about the 2 I tend to see at Grace, which are panic disorders and just generalized anxiety in general. I mean, a few OCD, but in general, these other 2. So this is what this looks like. Excessive worry about things. And when I mean excessive, just like what I said, we get done worrying about a test, now we're worried about Uncle Jeff. Like there's never a time they are not worrying. All these different things. I laugh because punctuality, that tends to be one thing. And with my child, she's never tardy, but worried she's going to be tardy to the point that she is map questing our house to Grace to tell me what time we're going to get there every morning. I'm like, this isn't normal. Don't all kids in high school do it? No, I'm having to pull my kid out of school. Okay, we have a little bit of a problem. And so this was good for me because I was like, yeah, what do I care if she map quests? I don't care. But I mean, every day for 6 years, and she's rarely tardy. It's a problem. I mean, so I'm just sharing with y'all openly because sometimes you don't even realize, and I'm going to talk a little bit about more, and sometimes these kids with anxiety, I was talking to somebody that knows all 3 of my kids, and I was sharing that story. And she's like, oh, is it such and such? I'm like, no. And she was shocked at the child it was because they hide it very well. They tend to be the kids that have it all together, that never a problem in class. So these are just things to, I just share that with y'all because we all have little things and it doesn't really cause a problem, but it might be a problem. The physical symptoms. And we see a lot of this on lower campus. With the headaches and stomach aches. Sometimes they're irritable in class, sometimes they're restless in class, but they're not ADD or ADHD. We have all these kind of symptoms, and they can be a sign that there's something more going on. The difficulty concentrating, fatigue, and inability to sleep is such a vicious cycle because the inability to sleep just makes the anxiety worse. If they're not sleeping good, then all that anxiety just gets ramped up. We've got to get them sleeping good if they struggle with these sorts of things. Okay, panic disorder, which I put this on here because, I wouldn't say we have a lot, but we do have some. And if it is not diagnosed, it is scary for the child, it is scary for the parent, and it is scary for the teacher because we tend to think they're having an asthma attack or something. That's when they go to Nurse Alyssa and she's like, but this isn't, they don't have any history of this or, what's going on? And so we'll have to get to, I'm like, oh, panic attack. We got a panic attack going on here. And then what happens with this is, if you're not willing to accept that it's a panic attack, the child starts to fear where they had the panic attack because the biggest fear is it's going to happen again because they feel very out of control. They feel like they can't breathe. So then they start avoiding the classroom that had happened. Then they start avoiding the sport that had happened in, whatever it is, if it was on a trip. So the biggest thing you can do for a panic attack is to acknowledge it and teach them about it. And because knowing is how, when I'm like, oh, it's a panic attack. When you start feeling like that,
you just come to the nurse and tell them, and you can sit and we'll let you calm down. If it's on upper, hey, you can come to my, just tell somebody, we'll allow you to just calm down. That's what's so important about naming whatever it is, because it's going to help them, and we can help combat that fear and take away the fear in them. Somebody wants to say something. So this is the question like everybody wants to know. Why are our kids so stressed out? Because I think the biggest thing that we struggle with as parents, and I know we have lots of different age parents in here, but what is so different now that wasn't when we were children? I mean, I'm being honest, I did not have levels of stress like this. I'm like, sure, I would study about a test. Sure. I didn't worry about my safety in school. It never occurred to me somebody would come in and shoot up our school. Our kids, whether we protect them, which that's a great thing you can do when you're young, is not let them see the recurring news cycle, but they are going to see it. So talk to them in age appropriate language and just reassure them. And you can even talk about how great, yeah, that's why the doors at Grace are locked, like try to reassure them. That's why we have a big camera where we can see all the entrances. We do everything. Reassure them, talk to them about their fears, because I think what we try to do is go away from that. I'm not saying if you have a kindergartner, talk to them about that unless they bring it up. But, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they're starting to worry about these things. And so I think we need to face it head on and find out pinpoint what they're fearing. The biological, that everybody believes now that it's a combination, the biological and the environmental. So the physiological has always been there. We've always had teenagers with hormones. We now know that their brains aren't fully developed till 23. So it makes sense now with all this additional stress, all this additional input, they can't combat the anxiety that they're seeing. And then it's genetics. If you're a parent with anxiety, likely your kid is going to have anxiety. Doesn't mean every kid of a parent with anxiety is going to have it. And it also doesn't mean every kid that has it has a parent that has it, but there is a component there. So if you just think about a jar, and this is whatever you're born with to handle stress, okay? So if you have a genetic predisposition, you're already here. Last year, I told our kids after the passing of a classmate, now their stress level's here. That's not much to deal with the rest of the world, okay? But I think if you look at that and think about that, that's why kids are different than us. We always had the biological. We always had the same genetic, but we didn't have school shootings. When I applied for college, it really wasn't that big a deal. I applied to 3 colleges. I got in. Me and my family decided, this is where I'm going. I might have had a little anxiety about leaving my friends. It wasn't, I have to get this score. I have to have these extracurriculars. I have to get into this school or my life is over. Like, it was not this level of stress. I'm going to show you a little video clip, people posting all over the internet. Yay, my kid nothing wrong with celebrating that. But it adds pressure to our kids, pressure that was not there when we were kids. I'm going to go into a few of these on the next slides in more detail, but I just wanted to list them all. High expectations, high performance culture. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Parental disapproval. I just want to say to y'all, even though you feel like you're not influential in your kid's life, you totally are, more than anybody else. Research has shown that across the board. Even when they're telling you you're dumb, even when they're not listening to you, you are still, even more so, it's the same-sex parent that is very influential in a child's life. So please take heart in that and know that when they let you down, they feel it, whether they show it or not. And then being at a Christian school, on top of that, we have the feeling that we've let God down, that somehow our achievement and our performance of how good we can be affects our value. So it's just something we have to make sure that we're instilling in our kids that, yes, we want to do, no matter, they're going to suck. They are kids. That's part of the way they're made. The best thing you can do is almost encourage your kid to mess up while they're under your roof so you can walk them through that. If they've never messed up and then they get to college and go nuts, it's really to help through it. So we just need to be aware of that. Drinking and drug use, chicken before the egg. Lots of kids who drink tend to have a lot of anxiety. It's just something you need to be aware of. I talked about the link with depression. Peer pressure, social media, video gaming. Huge thing. I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit more. So at the bottom, that's the main thing that's going on with their kids. They're under more pressure. They have more stimulus, more stimulation, more people telling them they need to be good at things, and it's just trickle-down stress. Way more than any other generation. So I just want to talk about a few of these a little more. High expectations, high performance culture, and pressure to succeed. This starts when they're young. The days of playing recreational anything for fun are kind of gone. You kind of see that the local parks, they have trouble finding people to even play against each other because everybody's got to be on a travel team. Everybody's got to be a superstar. Everybody's got to travel 4 states away to prove they're the best. Nothing wrong with that. But what it tells our kids is just playing for the sake of playing and enjoying something isn't good enough anymore. You're not good enough. You're doing that because you're not good enough. So it starts when we're young. In the standardized testing, we all know that they feel huge pressure about that certain score. But it's also even scores on little things. I mean, I have high schoolers. We try very hard. I know all of our teachers don't compare scores. They do it. And it's most of the time my overachieving kids are comparing their 99 to a 94. The person that got a 99 is smarter than, I'm like, how are you upset over a 94? Like, y'all are getting the same grade on your, they don't care. It's all about achievement. I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more too. We just live in a culture that achievement is where we get our value. So the other thing, I've talked about that too, just the world is a lot scarier than it used to be. They think about things that we never thought about. You know, people didn't get shot up going to get dinner in a movie theater. Things we did all the time by myself without anybody. Never occurred to me something like that could happen. This is the world they grew up in. They've never known a world without it. Social media. One of our next talks about this is going to be all about technology. So I would encourage you to be on the lookout for that. This is a part of our life. No matter how much you keep them away, it's there. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. But, you know, I know parents who've done a great job trying to limit that. Your kids are going to get to a certain age where they're going to find a way to get onto their school computer and log on to Instagram, even though they're not allowed to have Instagram. Like, it's just, they know what way more than any of us know. So we have to find a way to deal with it. They're constantly connected to social media, and this is where they're getting their self-esteem and what's influencing their worldview. So that's why it's so important here at Grace. We're trying to combat that, but it is a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle. And they just compare their lives to everybody else. I have people tell me all the time, well, I like my life, and I like my friend, and I like my family, but such and such just seems so much better. I don't want to be friends with them, but everything they do is so glamorous. It just makes them feel less than because they sit there and compare all day long. It's just a real problem. Oh, I'm already here. Okay, so I'm going to play this quick little piece. This was just a quick 4-minute clip of Raleigh teens just in September talking about the stresses of growing up. And whoops, sorry. There we go. And they're going to say it in their own words, which I think is really good. How do I unmute it? Here. Thank you.
About what happened.
Love my
today.
tech
If
people.
you would like a full list of those questions and some tips about how to talk to your kids about their mental health and their stress, you can go to our website right now. Some really great tips from them.
So interesting to hear them be so concerned about security.
That was one of the first things that came up.
Yeah, and social media.
Right, and a lot of them actually said they're not really on social media that
Guess
much.
what? This is still going from last night.
Kids are always on their phone, but they really are stressed by it, so they want to stay away from that. But it's so much fun to watch.
You got it?
David and I are both parents, and as
There we
parents,
go. Sorry. Y'all got to speak up. Say it's wrong. Especially with technology stuff.
Career path because we've been through it. At least we think we have.
Well, if you look at the numbers now, it seems teenagers
This
are
should be
having
scary
a harder
for
time
everybody.
with that stress. In fact, research has found the rates of depression among 14 to 17-year-olds have increased by more than 60% just between the years of 2009 and 17. The same study found a 46% increase in suicidal thoughts among 18 and 19 years old. Well, some high school and college students talked openly with WRAL's Mandy Mitchell about their unique challenges of growing up in 2019.
What has changed for young people growing up right now? Why are they struggling? What are they scared of? Is it just teenage angst, or is it something bigger than that?
I gathered 5 teenagers to help answer some of these questions. It was just me, my camera, and an otherwise empty room. an opportunity to open up, be honest, have a voice.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Mon. My name is Keith, and I'm a freshman at NC State.
My name is Manuel Sessoms, and I'm a senior at Nigel High School. Hi, I'm Kiara Bush. It's important to know the whole story. I could have everything going for me, but I could still feel terrible on the inside. I think that there are a lot of new factors being introduced. Social media and everything.
And social media.
A lot of people have stress in social media because they're trying to fit in.
Having views and likes and followers is always a sense of validation.
Just seeing social media, seeing these people that you want to be and that you aren't. My peers, like, they're posting like, hey, I just got a 4 right here, I just got a 4 right there. And I'm like, well, I haven't even started my application.
It's very easy to see someone that's more successful than you. It's very easy to find someone that's more well off than you, and sometimes you just feel stressed because you can't be that.
Paying for college is a huge stressor as well.
College is just so expensive.
Because college is so expensive now, and it doesn't matter if you get into your dream school if you can't pay for it. Year after year, the scores that you need to get accepted.
The pressure for our generation to do what their parents did.
It's always that looming feeling of failure and just kind of like, what if I don't make it this time? The fear of school shootings, the fear of going out to a public place and being shot.
Like, it could very much be me. It could very much be my school that's on the next national news story.
I don't always know what I would do in that situation. I'm in school, if I hear a door shut, I just automatically try to find the nearest exit. I don't know, it's just kind of this thing that hangs over people's heads most of the time now.
I asked the question, what do you want other generations to understand about what it's like to be growing up in 2019?
Some people deal with it in different ways. Definitely a lot of people don't show it.
And it's not something that we're making up. It's not something that's fake. It's a real thing, and it needs to be awareness about it. I just think that we're just being more understanding of the different things we're going through.
Understanding, a voice, and someone to listen.
Now I reached out to a group of local psychotherapists for tips of.
See if I can get back quick. Yay, okay. Oh no, wait. How do I get back to the? There we go. Okay. So that was Raleigh teens in our area. I think it's pretty powerful to hear from their own voices. And I think it's kind of interesting how there's a consistency about what they fear, because it's not like we ask our kids all the time, hey, what are you afraid of? You know, do you ever worry about that? I think we're afraid to ask them. We don't really want to know. We want to protect them. So this is for lower campus families that don't know. Every fall, our high school goes on a retreat, all the high schoolers, and it's a great thing. And I feel like I got to go for just like half a day, and I feel like it's one of the most wonderful things we do. And I hear from students, they love getting to know all the students, and they make new friends. It's just a great thing that we do. So they bring in different speakers, and one of them was talking about just what are your barriers to your relationship with Christ? Like, what kind of stands in the way? What areas are you not willing to release control over? And they had to write what it was on a brick. They couldn't see what anybody else did. They did this, and then there was a teacher that built the wall. So nobody saw this. You can't see. I should have zoomed in more. I think it may actually still be up on Upper Campus, so you can look at it. But overwhelmingly, anxiety is on there. I'd say 75% of them was anxiety. I had so many teachers emailing me this just to be like, this is what's going on with our kids. So I just wanted to show you that it's not somebody else's problem. We have it at Grace. And this achievement culture, and it's hard because we're a college prep school. We want our kids to get into good, how do we balance this? But I just think this illustrates nicely that what our kids are going through. Okay, so what are they thinking? What is going on in our kids' minds when they suffer from anxiety? I like this slide a lot because I think this really summarizes what's going on in our culture. Our kids are now finding their acceptance and significance in accomplishments and success. Okay, when they ask the question, am I enough? They're trying to validate themselves through their performance, whether it be in all the things on the right. Sports, how well they do in school, how many likes or views on Instagram, how well do they live up to our expectations, because even if we feel like we're not putting pressure on them, we inadvertently do. How well do they follow the commandments in the Bible? Or they're at a Christian school. They know what the Bible says and how they should act. And when they fall short of that, they feel it. It puts a lot of pressure. And so they don't feel accepted and they don't feel significance in their life. So I think this is really what is the root of what's going on. They no longer are looking for different ways to figure out where they belong. This is how anxious students get trapped in their thinking. Perfectionism. Everything must and can be done perfectly, just like I mentioned. A 94 is no longer good enough. They want a 99 or 100. And in some cases, if the teacher gives extra credit, especially if they want the 104 or the 100, the 100 isn't even good enough anymore. They want the maximum. I mean, it's an interesting, I am seeing this over and over again with students I talk to, and it is something very difficult for me to wrap my brain around. And I try to speak into them and be like, a 94 is as good as a 99. You're both getting A's. Nobody's going to look at the actual number. Catastrophic thinking, if one thing goes wrong, everything will fall apart and I won't be successful in life. What we can do, I'm going to talk about more of this in tips, but we need to help our kids understand one wrong move, one bad grade, one thing, not making one team, their life is not over. One bad spelling grade doesn't mean they're going to end up with a horrible spelling grade in the future. Like, we as parents inadvertently place so much emphasis on their grades, and especially on lower campus, if we could just get them to understand learning more, that it's really unrealistic to think you're going to get A's the whole time. Some of them do, but at what price? A lot of them do, but at what price? I could just share a lot of stories that would break your heart from kids that you think have it all together that are literally in my office on the floor in the fetal position come senior year, because they were taking so many AP courses that they can no longer function. It's not worth it. We have to do a better job of getting some balance in their life. There is one path to a successful life. I have to find it or stay on it no matter what. Really, we can help them with this, making the team, making the grade. Some of this too is helping them understand that it's okay to have a plan. I'm focusing on college because everybody on upper campus is applying right now. And I see a lot of seniors this time of year, but I see a lot more in the spring, and they've got to make that decision. If they don't get into their dream school or the college they always thought they would go to that their parents went to, they think their world is over. They think they have to make the right decision. I'm like, if you go there and hate it, I promise you can find another college to go to your sophomore year. We need to take that away, that there's only one way for them to be successful. And some of us inadvertently, both parents in Raleigh, there's like 5 schools in Raleigh. It's been, you're going to this school, you're going to this school. Well, a lot of those schools, it's not as easy to get into as it was when you were there. So you got to let it go. And it'd be great if it does. I get it. I'm jealous. I went to school in the South, and but I have the opposite problem. I have one that wants to go to my alma mater, and you know what I told her? I'm just as bad. No, you're better than that school. And she doesn't like, so I'm just saying, I do it too, inadvertently. It's terrible. So we need to teach them to manage their anxiety. These are just basic things, especially on the lower campus, but even upper. Encourage your kid to talk about their feelings. And it doesn't have to be like psychotherapy. Tell me how you're feeling. Acknowledge when they're mad about something. Acknowledge when they're sad. Oh, buddy, I hate you didn't get invited to that party. It makes you feel sad, doesn't it? Help them to just be in touch with all their, are you frustrated that mom took your phone away? I get it. I would be mad too. Acknowledge their feelings. And when you can get them to understand their feelings, there's not as much frustration. But again, it doesn't have to be super touchy-feely. It's just acknowledging different things. Exercise, eating right, and the sleep, all basic things make everything better. They certainly make anxiety better. And there's so much research to prove this, that being active and fit and just getting enough sleep helps fight depression and anxiety for sure. Evaluating his or her schedule. This is something that is great from a young age to an upper age. Our kids are overbooked. There is I know in my house, I have 3 kids. I don't know that there's a day that we go home after school. You know, it is just the norm now that we get home in the evenings. By the time my husband gets home, we have very little time as a family. We're having to reevaluate that because we need we need some downtime. When they get, and the thing is, if we do this when they're young, then they get to high school, it's great they have so many interests. But I'm working through some of these kids realizing this is all great. Something's got to go. You can't play a sport, take 4 AP classes, be in the play, there's no time. You're going to burn out, and I know it's hard, but you've got to let some of it go. And, you help them make an informed decision. And sometimes I know we feel like we're holding them back, but we're truly just teaching them to have a more realistic life. That's when you get with the college counselor. Hey, if your biggest concern is the college, what thing could go and it's not going to affect me getting in? If it's on lower campus, okay, school's important. I have families, their kid plays an instrument, their kid plays 2 sports. It's really, they're in every club. You've got it's not realistic. We don't want them to miss out. We want to give them everything they could possibly do to find themselves, but at what cost? And sometimes we have to be the bad guy, even if they want to. They're going to cry and scream, but we have to model that for them. The breathing is a big deal. I put that on there. We were just talking about it. A lot of my time down here is spent teaching the little ones how to breathe when they get upset, to recognize that. That is something huge you can do for your kids, whether you see this as a huge problem or not. A great book, I'll put it on the resource list. It's almost like a devotion. It's a 1-page thing. They pick an animal, and it's like you learn how to breathe like that animal. And I have one that was a snake, and it's a popular one. But then, I had a little girl come tell me, "Hey, Miss Hawley, I need that book." I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "I need a different animal. My mom's sick of hearing the snake." And I was like, "Okay, well, got to pick it." It was really cute. So if you normalize this, like they normalize it, like it's not a big deal. So, but I'll put that book on there too. And the last one, seek counseling if needed. And the truth is, I've got several counselors. A lot of times it's just a few sessions. They just feel better getting it out. Just letting it out. And I'm like, I'll have parents that email me and say, "Hey, can you talk to my kid? I think they're really stressed out," or whatever. I'm like, "Sure, I'll try." I meet with them 30, 45 minutes. Then I email back and be like, "Hey, I really didn't get anything out of them. I'm sorry. You might need to send them to a counselor, because if you think they're still struggling." "Oh, they're like a different person. They just did it." And I'm like, "I didn't say anything. They just need to get it out." Like, do you know what I mean? Literally one time, and they're like 100% better. So don't let counseling scare you. Doesn't have to be every week. Doesn't have to be. Can be a short period of time. But if you feel like they need, it helps us all to talk and just get it out. Everybody just feels better. I've talked with parents on upper campus that I've talked to for 30 or 45 minutes about their trend. They're like, "Oh, I feel so much better just talking about it." I'm like, "Yeah, that's what counseling is." A good counselor really doesn't talk very much. They just kind of sit there and, will ask you questions. So yeah, my secret's out. I don't really. Okay, so a big thing you can do is be aware of the signs of anxiety, which we talked about a lot. You can teach your kids that, the big thing I work with them on here, can you feel when you're getting angry, or can you feel when you're feeling anxiety? Your heart, do you clench your fist? Can you feel it in your face? Yeah. Helping kids understand that is huge into them being able to cope. Let's see, I think we've talked about most of these. Just wanted to have it on the slide so y'all could refer to it later. Okay, the chronic physical complaints, okay? We had a child yesterday. Alyssa and I tag team on some of these because crying, sobbing over the top that her foot was hurt, okay? This was just yesterday, the day before. Okay, Alyssa's like, "There's nothing wrong, I'm telling you." And I was like, "Okay, let me talk to her," okay? And we got it out of her. She was having anxiety about a situation. They don't even know when they're little that that's what's going on. But this over emotional reaction to things can be a big sign for y'all that something's going on, okay? Overreaction to something that happened in the family, that it's more anxiety. So I just shared that with you. We had another one that's coming in constantly just about little things. It's not even the stomach ache. Stomach ache is common. We know that, right? But just little things. "Oh, my hands hurt, my arms hurt." It's always something different. And so let's be like, "He has been here every day that I think he needs to see you." Like, she's really good at doing that. So that's just something to look out for if you start to see that, because some of these symptoms aren't what we typically think of as anxiety. And these are some of the signs exhibited in the classroom. So your first kind of knowledge that your child is suffering from anxiety may be getting interesting notes from the teacher that you've never had, or a conversation with the teacher. Hey, I tried to talk to her about her grade and she just completely melted down. And I wasn't being harsh. And you're like, oh, what's going on? You know, you don't really know what's going on. They're super self-conscious about everything, which that's really difficult with middle school and even into high school. They're just worried about how, so you can't just take that because they're all self-conscious. But if you start to see a pattern of these that are just, again, back to that, one of those first slides, if it just seems like an overreaction to where most people can handle the teacher talking to them about something, but some can't. It's just something to be aware of. Again, must be perfect, no room for error. They want every single spelling word correct. They don't want to get anything wrong on math. It's just a recurring pattern. So talk to your kids about potential stressors. Try to see the world the way they do. I hope that video clip helped a little bit, because I know that's what I struggle with as a parent. Sometimes I can't understand what they have to be stressed out about. So hopefully that's helpful. Help them keep perspective and find new ways to cope. Put it in perspective if they don't make a team. Hey, everybody, not everybody can make a team. We'll find something different. They don't get invited to the birthday party. Talk to them about it. Hey, there probably was a limit on the number of kids. You can't invite everybody. This especially happens when they get old. Help them to understand other potential causes of things where they don't just get stressed and think it's all about me. Help them. Hey, you are their friend. Look at everything you do together. Just something went wrong. It's okay. Same thing with colleges and scores on tests and all of that. Talk them through it. Hey, a lot of time what I do with a lot of kids on upper is I'm taking out the syllabus and helping them realize you can bomb a test and still do very well in a course. Help them realize when I taught college, somebody would get behind and I'd be like, okay, you need to be strategic. What is worth the most points here? If your goal is to pass this class, that's where you put your effort. Don't worry about the number that you missed. We have to teach these skills to our kids so that they're not freaking out over a quiz that's 10 points and they only got 2. Okay, it's going to be okay. They probably can still get an A in the course. It was an off day. Encourage them to self-advocate, talk to their teachers, but also just help them put things in perspective. Y'all are key in dealing with this. Key. This one, be mindful of the expectations you set for your children and teens. Obviously, all of our kids are at Grace. We are all, caring parents. It's a college prep. We want them to be ready to go to school, and they are. I think our 95% of our kids go on to 4-year, universities. They are going to go to a good college. It might, we've got to help them put it in perspective. And we've also got to help them not just have their heart set on one, because sometimes they can do everything right and it's just not the year. Somebody else got the slot. It's nothing that they did. You've done everything right. So help them with that. Help them to have multiple options, from a young age, that it's okay. There's not just one path to happiness. As much as you can. I'm going to talk about this in just a minute, kind of from the Christian perspective, but biblically, it's kind of, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's interesting to me, being in psychology, how much what we know now really does mirror what the Bible says. We need rest. Your kids need rest. Y'all need to have time where you do nothing. Have a day where you just are a family. So it's better for their mental and physical health. We've all got to remember that life is more than just achievement, even though that's good and we want that, but it's not just about that. So social media, can't remember if I mentioned, but our next one of these is going to be all on technology. So this is the best advice I can give you for that. Video games and social media. Learn the language and how it works. If your child is playing video games all the time, I highly suggest you sit with them and play with them, so you know what they're talking about when they say this or that. One, it kind of, for us, it takes away the stigma that this is all crazy town, which it is, because I'm in the thick of it, I know. There's also some redeeming qualities, that they are very social on there. I talk to a lot of your kids through the headphones. Lots of Grace kids, they don't even know who their child, they all play together. It's a way for them to connect. But if you're going to talk to them about how they get agitated when they play video games too long, it's very helpful if you can speak the language. Hey, especially when you're in that video game, I notice when you get off, you start acting like this. It just gives you more credibility. With social media, I don't think we understand, you don't know how many friend issues I have and how kids are sobbing because somebody defriended them on one of these platforms, okay? That's like nowadays, just like calling you out in front of everybody, like I am no longer your friend. And the thing is, they do it with ease. They do it today, then we make up and they do it back, but it still has the same impact. Talk to your kids about that. Tell them don't defriend anybody. Just let it ride, unless they're saying ugly things to you. But we have to know what's going on in their world to help them with this. Help them understand, oh, that person has 1,000 followers. They probably didn't even see your picture because it didn't come up on their feed. That's why they didn't like it. Not that they were intentionally not liking you. And some of you, if your kids have 1,000 followers, I highly encourage you to look at who those people are because you may be shocked. Okay, and this is the other thing, if y'all don't know much about all this, you can also see what all those people have liked and the stuff that's getting into your kid's brain without you even being aware. It's kind of interesting. So, but we'll save that for the next talk. But it's good to know what your kids are on. And it's here. It doesn't matter. We can't protect them. So we do to understand and help them to understand it. But, well, I don't want to get into that talk because that's the next talk, but we have to help them with that. Yeah, that's enough. Give us a teaser, I'll tell you. Okay, help them take breaks, scheduling certain days or certain amount of time they can play video games, super helpful for them. Pick a time for your family. Hey, we're going to all be off our phones for this afternoon and do something together as a family. And that includes mom and dad. Right? Sometimes we have to look at ourselves. We're on the phone and looking at stuff as much as they are, So that's important. This was floating around Facebook and Instagram. I thought it was really great. I'm going to put this in my resources too. I would encourage you to print this off and put it on your fridge. These are just little ways that you can start building a positive environment in your home that kind of insulates your kids from stress and anxiety. Just little things you can do. And the other thing is it's colorful, it's kind of cute. They will start to pick up on these things and learn these things. And you say, well, why do you do that? Oh, because it helps you feel better. It can be a way to start good conversations with them too. And these are all little things you can do. Model forgiveness, be present with your kids, set some boundaries. Just a list of things of what to do when your child is actually anxious and in the throes of it. The goal isn't to eliminate the anxiety, but to manage it. Again, we all have anxiety. They are going to have anxiety in their life. We have to help them learn to deal with it. You don't avoid things just because they make the child anxious. Now, I'm not saying if they have a severe fear of spending the night away, you send them to a month-long summer camp and just have at it. But I'm saying, hey, it's time that you should be doing this. You're going to spend the night at grandma's tonight. I'm going to drop you off at 9 o'clock tonight, and I'll pick you up at 9 in the morning. Let's try some small little incremental things, whatever it may be. But we've got to be realistic, and we've got to do that in, slow. Don't ask them leading questions. Hey, how's your anxiety today? Don't do that. How about how are you feeling today? Let them kind of take the lead and tell you how they're feeling. Because sometimes we can put that thought there, and it wasn't even there. Oh, should I be anxious about that? Don't reinforce the fear. Try to give them, we all have our own things that we're afraid of. I'll just say it. I don't like those carnival rides. They freak me out. I'm terrified for my kids to get on them, right? But I have to be aware of that. And if they have a fear of that, I don't have to say, oh, you're right, stay away from that. Because sometimes, it's crazy stuff like, for you people who are crazy about the scores at the restaurants on the health grades, then you're telling your kids, and now your kids looking at the health when they walk into a restaurant. We have to realize what we're passing on to our kids. I'm not even saying some of this is bad or anything, but you just have to be aware of the stuff that if your child is prone to anxiety, we can make it worse without even realizing, especially when it's our own stuff on it. Encourage them to tolerate the anxiety. The more times they get through the anxiety, the more times they sit through a test that they're completely panicked about and get through it and take it, versus staying home that day because they don't want to take the exam. The more they do that, the more they're going to get over these things. that's just how it works. You kind of have to, I do not like snakes. And I remember when I learned about this, and it used to be the big deal to do it all at once. Like they would put people in a room with a ton of snakes. I'm like, oh no, I will just live with the fear. That is not going to happen. But we now know more. It's about slow incremental getting them to that point. Okay, on the bottom, try to model healthy ways of handling anxiety. As I mentioned before, it's genetic. How do we handle things when we get stressed, out about stuff? I think we just have to be real aware, because even for those of us that are trying not to put pressure on our kids, we do it inadvertently. Or then there's some of us that are just way out of control. And we know we're stressed about college. We know we're stressed about their grades in the 4th grade. Like we know we are. We have to really do a self-check and realize what we're putting on our kids, because a lot of times we bring that to them. So our perspective as Christian parents, always, and that's what we try to do at Grace, is to help them find their identity in Christ. What does the Bible say they should be? How does God see us? And that's what we're always trying to reinforce. But it's difficult to do. We need to know, they need to know that they are enough. That they're enough in our eyes, and they're certainly enough in Christ's eyes. So we always have to reinforce, and that's what we try to do. That's what we're trying to do in the classrooms. That's what we're trying to constantly tell them. They are creations made by God, and they're special and unique. That can be difficult sometimes when we want our kids to not be unique. I'm kind of talking about this. Practical to-dos for the Christian parents: set the example. You know, we need to live a life trying to be free of acceptance and only be who, you know, we tell our kids all the time, don't worry about what people think, but we do. You know, I mean, we need to really kind of check ourselves. Where are we at spiritually, and what are we really modeling for our kids? Spend time together, quality time that doesn't focus on anything performance or achievement related. Just go get ice cream, go on a hike, just be outside, you know, just realize there is more to life than everything. And quality time doesn't mean being in the car, traveling to 4 states away to go to a soccer tournament. You know, I mean, that's, and I can use some of these examples because that's my life. You know, I mean, like I very much have to keep myself in check about some of these things. Delight in your child. Praise their uniqueness. Focus on that God made them this way. And again, this is hard to do. I feel like it's easier as my kids get older, but when they're young, you so desperately want them to fit in, want them to have friends, you know, you want them, but you have to realize we're all unique creations, and we need to, instead of trying to turn them into being like everybody else, this is who they are, and God made them this way for a reason. I was talking to a parent last night, and they have a feisty child. I have a feisty child. They can give us a run for their money and their children, but she's going to be an awesome adult. You know, I mean, and I just keep holding on to that and tell her, God made you this way. You know, we'll figure out what the end game is, but you are not, you are who you are by design. This is it. Make time for rest. You know, the Bible talks a lot about rest, right? Getting time away. And that's why I said it's kind of interesting to me how more mainstream psychology is kind of getting back to what the Bible says, that there's value in that. There's value in just having some weekly downtime as a family. Allow your child to miss a game. You know, I'm guilty of going to a sporting event and missing church. You know, I mean, like, what is the value of getting your kids, you know, just putting, I guess, just a life of balance is what I'm trying to say. We just have to all kind of be in check and make sure that we're doing what our kids need. Some additional thoughts just from some of the Christian literature I've been reading is just that God created us to be in community. And that starts with your child. Know your child, you know, spend time with them, because what that's going to help you do is understand their stressors and help you figure out ways for them to cope. Okay. And again, the goal is not to fix them or remove this anxiety. It's to help them go through it. We want them to know that they're more than anxiety, and this is just something that we'll learn to cope with. It doesn't define who they are. It's just a part of them. So how can Grace and parents partner together? Super helpful if you let us know your child's struggles, because what happens, I get it. It's kind of, you know, especially if you're seeing a counselor outside of Grace, it's kind of our family thing. I totally get that. But what tends to happen, particularly if they're going through a difficult time, is it ends up coming out at school. I get a call from a teacher. They're up seeing me, and then I'm calling you, and they're like, oh, yeah, this has been going on. It's super helpful if we know what's going on, because then when something happens, I can communicate with their teachers We can problem solve together about ways to relieve what's stressing them out. And we can just try to make it better. I can also partner with the therapist. There are so many, there's like some classic techniques that we use, but every therapist has their own language for these things. If I'm saying the same thing as the therapist is saying when they come to, they're having a stressed out day, instead of me teaching them my technique about thought stopping, using a stop sign or whatever, if they do something else like, I don't know, whatever, somebody else, if I'm speaking the same language as their therapist, it's just reinforcing those strategies. So I always like to keep that communication open so we can talk with the therapist. You can contact me anytime. We can talk privately. I'm willing to do anything. We can talk privately. I can give you resource and strategy. I can refer counselors to you. I can pull your kid without them knowing you called me. Sometimes your kid will come and they'll want to talk to me. I'm willing to do anything. If your kid is embarrassed and doesn't want to get pulled out of class, which what I will say is typically not the case at all. That's what we all fear. That's our anxiety that, oh, people are going to think they're going to see the counselor. There's a couple. I'm not saying there is a couple, but we have sneaky ways around that. On this campus, I've been known to get the art teacher to come get them. I get the nurse to come get them. Like I will get people to come get them. They don't know they're coming to see me. On upper campus, we set up a time. They come to me when the bell rings. If they're super afraid of that, they'll stay the whole time. And then when the bell rings again, they'll go on to their next class. Nobody knows. But most of the time they'll come to me when the bell rings. I just send them back with a slip. Nobody knows where they've been. You know, they could have been working on a math project somewhere else. So take the stigma away from them coming to talk to me, because then I can help y'all get to where y'all need to be. But in general, it hasn't been a problem, just so you know. So just kind of the things I want you to take away is that anxiety is real, and knowing the signs is half the battle. There's resources and strategies that offer relief. It can get better. It's y'all, your family doesn't have to live like this. And don't be afraid to talk to your kids about it. Put a name to it. Be open about it. And get them professional help if needed. And here are a lot of the resources that I'm going to send to you. I think it's the Christianity Today. I'll highlight that one, but it is great because it comes from a Christian parent that walked through this. And she talks a lot about, you know, just her feelings, like they prayed and prayed as a family for like 2 years and nothing ever got better. So then they went to a just kind of there, I just think it illustrates so nicely what we bring to it, that we bring a lot of our stuff to our kids' struggles. And that's in anything, not just anxiety. We bring it to them, and just kind of how she walked through it and found, you know, solutions and helped get her kids some relief. So I don't know if anybody's texted me. Oh, I do have a question. I have a question. Let's see. Naming panic attacks, does that set up the kids to think they are having attacks when they may not be? I would say no, because it is a distinct feeling. I can understand you're worried about it being a crutch. This is when I would also say, I'm not going to diagnose your kid with a panic attack. You need to go to a physician, or you know, and they can tell you if you're having a panic attack. Because I think that's our fear, right? Is if we say that this is it, they'll use it as a crutch, and they'll always say this is what's going on. But I guarantee you, particularly, first of all, the younger ones aren't going to be able to control it. They don't know why they're crying or can't breathe. 6th grade through high school, the majority of them don't want to stand out and be different, particularly in the classroom setting. So that is not something they're going to fake. That has just been my experience. They want to fit in and draw as little attention to themselves as possible, unless it's in a positive thing, such as being on stage, being in a sport. Then it's okay to have the attention on me. But general, every personality is different. But that would be my thing. And that's why you get a professional to help. But that hasn't been my experience. So. But they are afraid. It's the biggest thing with panic attacks. They're afraid it's going to happen again. So the anxiety just ramps up and increases the likelihood it will happen. Any other questions or things I can answer?
I had a question.
Yeah.
Well, 2 questions. One
Yes.
about, I know we can, teacher education. So
Yes.
the same seminar has been.
Yes,
the teachers.
yes,
Okay.
yes. I just met with our upper campus teachers Monday, and I will be meeting with our lower campus teachers, because I think that's, it's all about education, right? It's about educating our parents, but it's also about educating our teachers to understand the same thing, that anxiety is real, and getting them to understand the symptoms that don't look like what we perceive as anxiety. So absolutely. And that article you sent me is really good too.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I like
Yeah.
that article.
Yeah. Question number 2.
Yes.
We hear about a healthy diet.
Yes.
And I was wondering, are there certain foods that exacerbate anxiety?
I don't want to misspeak because I don't know. I haven't looked into that to see, but I know that there's been a lot of research, but it would be just with the typical stuff that you've seen. Somebody else is really in that. Could probably, but like, the dyes and the sugar, all that. Because I've had friends that kids have had severe anxiety and they put them on just a real basic clean, and it was like, it improved a lot, especially when they were young. So I do think there's some value there, but I don't want to misspeak. I might even have some. It is, I'll add it to it.
That would be great.
To me, it's like, it's worth a shot if it's success. I mean, what's the harm in trying?
Okay. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions? Anything? But I'm here. Please reach out. I know in a big setting, it's kind of hard to, you might not want to draw attention or talk about your particular child in front of everybody, but I'm happy to do anything and everything I can do to help, and I'm flexible with that. Like I said, I'm happy to support you, never have to see your child, happy to see your child, never tell them I spoke to you, whatever you want. Yes.
Just one thing for those of you on, Carrie's on both campuses, and on our campus, if a student comes into the office and they're upset about something, and Carrie's not there, we will ask them if they need space to just, work through things. But also, they can just email her and she'll pop right back up. Most times for upper campus, the students they know how to email.
They do.
Dr. Hawley, and they'll be emailing back and forth and say, I need to speak to you. And then she comes up, It's a little different. Sometimes the teachers don't even know that that's happening. I mean, unless a child really melts down in the classroom, in communicating with her. So you can just encourage them to do that if you think your student needs that.
Yeah. And they will, and I will just say about that, like I said, it's a lot of time it's your fear. One thing that I've noticed, and I've actually been pleasantly surprised about, they don't have trouble being advocates and coming to see me. It's kind of shocking. They're really, I think society has done a good job of knowing that, there needs to be some help and intervention, so they don't seem to have that stigma. I think you were first. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I don't have the trouble being like, if you're the only kid without cell phone until this day,
Right.
don't care.
Right.
Like, I don't have that trouble.
Right.
But you're talking about them really desiring to be
Yes.
like everybody
Yes.
else.
Yes.
And at what point do I have to say, okay, I don't care if you're the last child on earth that plays this video game. I don't care if you're the last person on earth that gets access to this. Whatever it is, that might be his trigger or her.
Yeah.
What point do you say, okay, for the sake of your well-being in this group setting?
Right.
Oh, I just don't know when you compromise that.
Okay, so I would say that is completely, I would say that's individual child basis. If you're asking my, professional opinion, I'd say hold off as long as you can, like with the cell phone, because it's just difficult. However, it's not practical for everybody. We have people, that are divorced. I can tell you my oldest child got her cell phone much earlier. She was in a competitive sport where she was away from us all the time, and she has anxiety. And so she did not like being at that location without able to get me if something happened, like if she got hurt or the electricity went out. So she had it much earlier than my other two. So, it's very individual, but I think you're right in thinking that at some time it's not going to be worth the, the other thing, if he starts to be left out, this is mine, oh, I want a cell phone. Well, it's not affecting you socially.
No. Yeah.
None of your, guess what? Here's the other thing I'll tell you. He's not the only one. That's a big old lie. Because and this is the other thing. No, but they're good at it and they make you feel that way and then you feel bad. This is the other thing, and I don't know how you do this, but I did it good with my son. His closest friends don't have cell phones either. So whatever. Your best friend don't have it. Whatever, y'all can just be your own little group. Because I don't care. But I can't for some other one where everybody's got it. So try to find like-minded parents when they're young and foster those relationships. But it's a real thing. And we'll talk more about it. But I'd be happy to talk to you. To me, kind of a general rule is if it starts affecting him. If he is truly left out of things and if he feels bad about it. Some of them, I have one that could care less, doesn't want to be on social media.
Great.
You know what I mean? Like they're all different, but that's what I would say. But there is no harm, and you are not the only parent at Grace that doesn't, lots of people wait until much later.
I mean, my kids are dumb like a fox.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So they're like, oh, yeah.
But like I said, and then, like I said, then when you
There's
get
always a story.
into where they're finding a way, and then you're kind of creating an environment where they're lying, where they're sneaking around and logging on
Right,
to
I
get
don't
on.
like-
You don't want that either, but I doubt you're there yet. But that's when I would say it's not worth it. But
But
yeah,
also listen to your mom heart.
that's right.
Because they may think,
Oh.
I really want this now, I'm left out.
Yeah.
But what they're left out of is the chats that hurt.
That's right.
And
Social media, the
connections
professor.
that just tear them down.
Yeah.
So you're the mom. You're
That's
the adult,
right.
you know, so don't give up,
That's
don't
right.
give
Don't
up.
give, and even our,
Regret. You can regret.
It's hard to reel it back in after you.
Yeah.
You have,
can
yeah.
regret that there too soon.
and I will say that those on the upper campus that are more mature and recognize struggle with anxiety, and when they realize it's their social media, so they'll take themselves off it. It's kind of refreshing. Like that, some of them will do it because they're like, yeah, I can't. I know this takes me to a bad place. And again, that talks about, it's kind of about establishing, having these conversations when they're young. So it's just normal that we talk about this, like that sort of thing. Kate, did you?
Yeah, I just started doing Stephen ministry training at church, which
Yeah.
is all about active listening for
Yeah.
adults, which I've had to. It's already taught me a lot about listening up and just being there.
Uh-huh.
And I know there are other places which do training around
Yes.
the triangle area. So, I mean, it is a way of actually being in a formal setting and learning rather than just reading a book. Although
Yes.
it's great books and active listening. But from my daughter, so she gets upset, she closes down. So, and she's very good. She says, I'm grumpy.
Yeah.
We all talk about I'm grumpy. The best way for me to help her open up is foot rub, shoulder rub, back scratch, and just put her there.
Yeah.
She should talk. But my question is, you mentioned about anxiety leading to depression.
It can be, but it's rare, I would say. The majority, gosh, I hate to quote something, I'll say like 75% people with depression struggle with anxiety and that sort of thing. But undiagnosed depression, undiagnosed anxiety, nobody's getting treatment for it. Huge cause of depression in teens. But no, absolutely, there can be depression with no anxiety. But it is, at least that's what we know now. We may know more in the future.
Are there resources for career development